Welcome again to Joe's Stun at Boxing. Let's talk about Daniel Dubois because it was a shattering defeat in the rematch with Usyk. And a lot of people have been quite scathing about Dubois. They've made the statement that, of course, he quit again. He could have gotten up, which I think is probably true. I think he was conscious. He took the count, probably mistimed it. What can you say about Daniel? It's difficult to talk about him and his mentality without alluding to the fact that he's either has a low IQ or he is on some sort of spectrum, autism, Aspersions, or so on. So whenever I mention things like that, I don't mean to be rude or unkind to the bloke. I just think he is what he is, and in actual fact, I do have some sympathy for Daniel, and I'll go through the reasons why in this video. I think when all is said and done, he is probably quite a gentle giant, quite a nice kid. But because of his mentality, neurology, IQ, whatever, mental condition, and so on and so forth, I think he's kind of childlike. And I think it's worth contemplating whether, because he has that mentality, there's almost an air of exploitation about the way that he's handled. Exploitation's the wrong word, but at the end of the fight, if you remember, Daniel congratulated Usyk. Don Charles appeared and actually said to Daniel, "Thank the crowd," or thank the people that turned up, Daniel. That little cameo there sums up Daniel Dubois perfectly for me. Everything has to be scripted for this kid because he has a completely childlike quality, and I don't mean adolescent quality. I mean pre-adolescent, where he has to be guided constantly. Now, when I mentioned a moment ago and again, I suppose exploitation is the wrong word, but I can't think of a better one. What I mean is that the people around him will regard him as a commodity. Okay, he is a very big, powerful boxer who has made many millions for himself and others, and will continue to do so if he continues to fight. The childlike quality of Daniel comes out of him when he talks about his father. His dad guides him. He loves his dad. He's got this big smile on his face, and there's nothing wrong with that. He loves his dad. One assumes his dad loves him. But of course, there is that element of his dad's going to tell him to do something and he'll go and do it. Doesn't matter what it is. Now, if you throw Don Charles into the mix, probably more so in terms of the public than Stan Dubois or Dave, whatever his name is, then the conduct of Don Charles in the lead up to this fight didn't do Daniel any favours at all. Just before I get to that, I don't know if Don Charles was responsible for this or whether it was Stan Dubois or it could have been Frank Warren or it could have been all three or it could have been all three and more. But if you think back to when Usyk defeated Fury for the second time and he was in the ring talking about, his country, I think his dad got mentioned and, he was having his moment, and then suddenly Daniel storms the ring, gets in his face mid-interview and starts mouthing off, "I want my revenge, I want this." Sounds completely fabricated, completely scripted. So I don't know who told him to do that, but they're a damn fool for doing so. And a very crass, vulgar individual if they told him to do that. Daniel, of course, being Daniel, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Did it without really understanding the emotional thrust of it. or exactly what he was doing. Again, he has that little boy attitude, mentality. But if you want to talk about being crass and vulgar, let's fast forward a little bit to when Don Charles was at the press conference, one of the press conferences, and started casting aspersions on Usyk, saying that he faked the low blow, that he was a liar, casting aspersions on Usyk's Christian faith. What is he, Orthodox Christian? All of this smacks of, I mean, never mind pushing the horses. Talk about poking the bear, poking the lion. Usyk, if ever you've looked at gorillas, if you ever go to the zoo and look at a gorilla is this hugely impressive, immensely strong creature. But when you see them either in the zoo or you watch documentaries or whatever, they're really passive. They're just sitting there, munching a few leaves or whatever and minding their own business. And they'll only become angry and violent if someone pisses them off. Well, it seems to me that Don Charles and then everyone else involved with Usyk must have mistaken the sort of gregarious nature of Oleksandr Usyk as being soft, maybe. I don't know why they would think that, or that he's perhaps a boxer but hasn't got that spite in him, that fighter's nastiness. Of course, the reality is, and I'm astounded if they didn't realise this anyway, that Usyk can be a really nasty bastard when the mood takes him. And to cast aspersions on him, his religion, his country, to interrupt him when he was talking about his dad, his late father, he was extremely close to just rile him up, has got to be one of the most stupid tactics imaginable. If anything, you want to lull him to sleep. You want to keep him nice and steady. He'd won the first fight. Let him think that this is going to be an easy fight, this rematch. Let him think that, this is just more of the same. If Daniel hasn't got any kind of intellect really at all, but if this was a brighter fighter, they would be saying, you know what, he got the better of me the first time, but I think I can do better. You don't want to be too fraudulent, but you want to at least say, yeah, he's great. He's a great fighter. He really is, and he's a nice guy, and blah blah blah. But I've had 3 good wins. I think I can do better. I think leave it at that. Don't go in rattling his cage. It's absolute stupidity. And I think the fact that Daniel was subjected, and I mean it that way, he was subjected to this type of tactic from the people around him. I can't believe that Daniel, this sort of fake roadman image that he's tried to cultivate, I can't believe this comes from him. I mean, it is possible that having got some money and, got himself a girlfriend, got his leg over and all the rest of it and become, oh, look, I'm a man now, it is possible that it went to his head. There's always that possibility, even though he's got a low intellect. It may have been that he just thought, I've made it. I am, because he can't see any sort of nuances, because he can't see any grey areas. It's all complete black and white to him. He may have thought, I'm here now. Usyk, who the fuck's Usyk? He may have thought that, but I think it's a more likely scenario that the people around him were feeding his garbage into his brain. So I actually have a lot of sympathy for Daniel Dubois, and for the record, I do think he could have gotten up in that 5th round against Usyk. But as I said in my preview, and I said in the live that I held on last Friday, if you've got someone like that who is on the spectrum, or there's something lacking there, or some intellectual disadvantage, then they may be excellent at certain things, as with, say, autistic people. They're very brilliant at a certain thing, because they're focused. It's tunnel vision. They don't have a periphery. But when suddenly they have to think on the op and things are not going their way and things are not adding up as they should, they can completely unravel. if you've worked with autistic people or people with behavioural disorders, or anything, you know that this is the case. I've had some experience in that area, and I think that's what that was always going to happen with Daniel, just as it happened, the Joe Joyce fight. He had a busted eye socket. He quit. No problem. I don't mind that. It's not his place to lose a fucking eye just so I can be entertained or you can be entertained. Yeah, he quit. He did quit, but he had a busted eye socket. Second fight against Usyk was far more telling to me because he mentally unraveled. He just could not do anything with Usyk, and Usyk just bewildered him, befuddled him, mentally chopped him up and packaged him. And I think this time round in the rematch, it was slightly different because it was more brute force. It wasn't death by 1,000 cuts. It was dominance followed by an absolutely clinical finish from a truly great fighter. But again, Daniel knocked down twice. Maybe he couldn't hear the count. I mean, there were 90,000 people screaming. But he didn't look like he wanted to go on. Why? Because he wanted to go on. Why? Because nothing had gone to plan. And when nothing goes to plan for someone like that, there is no plan B. They're not capable of thinking of a plan B. Never mind a plan C or D. It's all, Daniel, you need to do this and you win. And he's still capable of beating a lot of very good fighters. He does certain things very, very well. He's big, physical guy, very good jab, hits like a truck. Has got good stamina, actually, a good chin. There's nothing wrong with his chin. I mean, he got floored against Usyk. He got floored by a punch behind the ear, which can scramble your senses. And then there was that hellacious Ivan the Terrible hook that Usyk threw, which put Daniel over again. But there's nothing really wrong with his chin. He took punches from Pergovic, from Miller. Even Joshua landed a very good punch that rattled Dubois just before he knocked Joshua flat. So the guy does things well. He's 27 years old. He can come back. He hasn't got the mentality, the intellect to become anything more than a very powerful, heavy-handed, does the basics well fighter. And he will need the right people around him. Now, if the right people if that's going to be continue to be Don Charles, I don't know. But he's still a good fighter, and he's still a name. He can still earn money. But his limitations, which are mental, I mean technical to some degree, but no one can match Usyk for the technical side of things anyway. His mentality is what's going to hold him back. There'll never be any variety there. There'll never be any imagination because Daniel doesn't have an imagination. He fights to orders. He fights to a tunnel vision. And I think the fact that he has been guided over the last year as almost like a sort of vessel in which other people pour their ideas. I think that's to his detriment. No way he should. Usyk is a popular guy. He's an honourable guy. He's a dignified guy. Why on earth were these people trying to rattle his cage? Quite extraordinary stupidity of the build-up to that fight. And I would love to know how much of it was the sheer nastiness and bitterness of Don Charles, the sheer illogical drivel that came out of his mouth. How much of it was Frank Warren, who was probably just standing at the sidelines smirking and pretending he's not involved, and Stan Dubois, Dave Dubois, whatever the fuck his name is. I wonder how much of it was him. It bears thinking about, but Anyway, just a few thoughts on Daniel. I do have sympathy for Daniel. I do have, and sympathy is perhaps the wrong word. Empathy. I want to try and have empathy for Daniel Dubois. I don't think he's a bad kid. I don't think he's a bad lad, and I wish him well for the future. His career's only over if he wants it to be over, and if he walks off into the sunset, he's made millions. He's held a world belt. Good luck to the kid. That's more than most people achieve. So let me know your opinions. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Have I not touched on something that you feel very strongly about? Just let me know. Thanks for your time as always. please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, and I'll get you later. Bye for now.